You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
We are socially really taught, and some of that has good benefits, like high communication skills and high ability to order, but it also affects the way that we feel like we can show up in the world, particularly taking up space and being a bitch, being demanding something because you said so is something oftentimes that women feel like they don't want to be labeled difficult. They don't want to be labeled a bitch. They don't want to be labeled the person that is inherently unlovable, right? As a result of going for and asking for what they want.
All right, let's get this party started.
It's getting hot in here. I ain't getting so hot, I'm gonna take my podcast off. Okay, let's do this.
Let's do it. Oh, okay.
White
First
boy,
of all,
white dad.
You just, more than white dad, you just owned yourself as a elder millennial by raising by raising the roof. Okay.
Raise the roof.
If I start doing Arsenio Hall, I'm a certain generation.
I can't wait to listen to the edited version of this episode.
I'm that generation. As soon as I saw you raise
Alan
the roof,
leaves all this shit in.
as soon as I saw you raise the roof, I said, "This is my people. This is it."
Oh, what a great way to start the day. Okay.
That's right. All right, let's do this.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Was It Chance, the podcast about embracing opportunity and taking intentional risk for your creative life. Alan, you have to stop raising the roof while I'm trying to talk because I cannot focus.
I am of a certain generation.
I'm Heather Vickery.
And I'm certain generation Alan Seals. I also
Millennial
know who
Alan Seals.
Raise your hand, raise the roof if you know who Arsenio Hall is, and listen in as we chat with other successful people about the risks they've taken to put themselves on a path to creative success, including our incredible guest today. Heather, who is it?
Okay, seriously, y'all listen to me. You want to know what happens when you combine a commitment to social change with storytelling? You get the incredible Nikki Payne. And by day, Nikki is a civic anthropologist. What? I can't even say that word. Nikki, how do I say that word? Anthropologist. What is it's early, y'all. I'm about to catch a flight.
Sure.
I had a shot. It's been a morning already.
Anthropologist.
She is creating more accessible government services, and she is also a rising star in the literary world, using her words to challenge and transform. Her debut novel, Pride and Protest, has been hailed as incandescent, and I can back that up. Oh my God, it's an amazing book. Earning Nikki a spot in the National Book Festival, and she's featured in major outlets nationwide. Nikki is on a mission to write Black women into the spotlight, and her stories are sparking a movement. I am such a big fan, and I'm geeking out right now. Nikki, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome. You so much. Thank you so much. I'm over here blushing. I'm thank you.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And you're so you're so human on social media. You're just a person who's out here putting your best work out and your heart out, and you're so connectable on social media. We chatted there and I was like, will you come on my show? I have to tell you, I first discovered your book through Book Talk. I never say that well. We've had guests make fun of me. It sounds like I said TikTok, but it's TikTok, but it's Book Talk.
Big tech.
And I was resistant because I don't typically like retellings of classic stories. But you changed all that.
Well, I love that. And I'll just say that there's so many instances of people coming to my book in the way that people are reluctantly transformed. Everyone's Paul on the road to Damascus. They're just I don't want any part of this, I don't want to do it. And then they read it and they're like, wait a minute. This is actually something. I love that story because we can have retelling PTSD because sometimes people don't, take enough chances in a retelling.
Yeah. Tell me about your day job. Tell me about your work.
I work for the federal government. And what we do is help build very human digital services. So if you think about the ways that people have to I don't know, particularly for vulnerable populations. If you are applying for social services like SNAP, or if you're a veteran and you're applying for your well-deserved veteran benefits, like most of the services that the government used to do, it used to be kind of face-to-face or through enormous amounts of paper. But we're in a digital space right now, and we have to think about how to rebuild government services in a way that the way real people actually interact with services. So I don't know, there's a small project of transforming the government into a small digital services, organization, because that's in a large way what we're doing.
That's really important work.
I love it.
Yeah, I can, if I had that skill set. I don't have that skill set, but we need that so badly across the board. A friend of mine has it's not the same thing, but it's a similar approach. Her business is in helping people make sure that social media, their website, their emails are disability friendly, for people who are using readers or things like that. And man, we don't talk about that stuff enough. We don't realize how important it is. I got really hot on Threads the other day because some know-it-all, whatever, coach, copywriter, I'm a coach too, but said you can tell somebody's using AI when their hashtags have capital letters. I was like, no, that's what you have to do for
accessibility.
Yes.
Yes, you're correct. So we build those things, the accessibility. We ensure that people are able to access all aspects of the government, no matter what level of digital knowledge you have.
That's so cool. I'm so glad you're out there doing that work. My new cousin.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the government work and the literary work seem like two opposing things that need to constantly conflict and cause stress in your brain and in your life. Is this true? And speaking with someone who also has conflict between two competing worlds, how do you manage all this?
I typically need my writing escape to manage the craziness that can be government work. So oftentimes people think of it as competing ideas, but in the knowledge economy, you spend so much time thinking about how a process could be better. And by the end of the day, you just want to make two people get it on. Do you know what I mean? You just want to make sure that these two people kiss, and that's your only problem. And it becomes a space for me to actually decompress.
When did you know you wanted to write novels?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a good question because I've always wanted to tell stories, and it started very young, just in these salacious, never-ending Barbie episodes. I would play Barbies, and if you think Beverly Hills 90210 or Days of Our Lives was in any way soapy or juicy, you haven't seen anything since, because people were having babies by their brother. Things were getting wild in my Barbie world. Okay. And I love it. I loved building these stories, and I loved playing Barbies with people and showing my stories to those people that I was playing Barbies with. This incredibly creative work to make these two people, to be the god of these people's world, and to tell those stories. So the idea of storytelling came well before writing. I just loved it. Just a ham. I'm like, you'll never believe the twists and turns of this Barbie world. Okay.
That's amazing. And also weirdly synergetic. As a child, I'm an only child. And as a child, I spent a lot of time playing Barbies, and I could not play with them until I had set up full backstories each time. And every time was different. Exactly what was happening, and then we could get going.
You're a storyteller, right?
Thank you. I'm writing my very first novel.
Campfire. Okay.
I love that. I'm writing my very first novel this month. I've written and published several books, but they've all been nonfiction, and I'm terrified to write a novel. So, how do you go from Barbies and backstories to retelling these classic stories, but in this so beautiful and poignant and important way?
I would say that whatever success that I've had for Pride and Protest came out of abject failure. Like, I love that this podcast is about, taking a chance, because I would not have I would not be where I am right now without taking a crazy and insane chance. So I was submitting a lot of science fiction, a lot of Jane Austen in space, like a lot of, a lot of sci-fi and Afrofuturism. And it was just a wall of no. It was just, no, 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 you're terrible. No one's going to read this weird stuff. And so I just started writing something that would just bring me joy. I just wanted to feel the joy of storytelling, and I wanted to feel it for myself. And I wanted to make myself laugh, and I wanted to make myself a little hot under the collar, and I wanted to do something for me that brought me joy. And I said, you know what? This isn't for anybody. I'm just going to put it on Amazon. And I put it on Amazon with like a cover from, one of those Shutterstock sites or whatever. And it was I've never seen so many 1 stars. Like it was an army of 0 out of 10 would not recommend. Except there was this one like 2.5 star. And it was this person who said, you know what? I see the kernel of this story. It just needs an editor. And this is on Goodreads. Already I'm making my first mistake, because you should never be on Goodreads as an author. And
you shouldn't read your own reviews, right? Yeah, never. Absolutely. Yeah.
And the big chance that I took was DMing that review that said she just needs an editor. And I was like, do you know one? And she said, I am one. And I worked with her, I talked with her, and built up a story with more heart, more emotional depth, and a story that I was really proud of. And then I submitted it to Pitch Wars, won Pitch Wars, and was in like a 37 agent tie to try to get my book published. But yeah, was it chance? Absolutely. A little bit of bravery. Yeah. A little bit of bravery too, but yeah.
Oh, wow. First of all, I know, Alan, I'm going to let you ask questions, I promise, but I'm geeking out really hard right now. So
no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm listening. This is fascinating.
I love that story because it shows the power of editing. I'm currently, for the very first time, going through The Artist's Way, and some I like and some I don't like, but this reminder that you don't do it to be great, you do it to do it, and then you go back and rework it. And I love that, and a good editor can change everything, and it's still your story, and it's still your heart and your characters and all of that. And I have to tell you, I read a lot. I read about 125 books a year. I usually take about a week. Your books took me 1 day, both of them. I could not put it down. And I think I put this on, I don't know if I put it on TikTok or Threads or wherever. I mean, paragraph 1, I was like, oh my God, I cannot do anything but read this book today.
Oh my God. I love that, because I do most of my work, most of my obsession on those first chapters. I'm like, literally, I got one chance with them, Yeah.
I love that approach, because even my daughter, who's 11, my youngest daughter, who's 11, is reading a book, and she said, I can tell this book is good because I'm already excited 30 pages. And she goes, usually it takes at least 50 pages. And I think a lot of authors follow that approach. Like, oh, people will give you 30 or 50 pages. You can ease in. You've got it figured out, Nikki, because I mean, page 1, and I'm like, okay, yeah, we're sold. We're like, when is Nikki writing her 3rd book, which we're going to get to? I want to know.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. It's a lot of work. And like you mentioned, like working with an editor, it's absolutely like, people think that you can like be edited out of existence, but what an editor actually does is say, what do you mean to say here? Right? Like, what are you trying to elicit? And oftentimes, any person who writes fiction, you're just trying to manipulate someone's emotions for long enough for them to finish the book. Do you know what I mean? If these characters are falling in love, you want them to fall in love with the character. You want them to be completely angry when one character upsets them. You want them to be terrified when they're in the dark and there's something creeping. You want them to feel the same. And if someone is reading your novel and getting to a point where you're trying to make them feel incredibly excited and they don't feel that, that's feedback that you need. And then you write the thing that makes them feel that. But that editor saying, I know what you're trying to do here, but it's not giving, it's not giving fear. It's not giving sexy. It's not giving this. And you take that and you build a better story, because at the heart of it, what you're trying to do is like this incredibly complex thing, is make another person feel the emotion that this character is feeling. And it's a bit of alchemy.
That's really cool that I guess you put it out there. And were you bothered by the first book you put out? Everyone said it was terrible. Editor comes in, starts helping you edit. Did you take down that first version and republish it again?
I took down that first version because I was going to do this Jane Austen thing and publish the book in serials. So it was only the first third of the book. I'm gonna like serialize it. I'm just like, I'm gonna do my whole Austen. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a genius. And what I did once I submitted it was take that book down. Not because I wasn't excited about the project. At the heart of the project, it was still the same idea, but I wanted people to see the new work that I'd put into it. I wanted people to see like the depths that I had gone to make this a story that people would be excited about.
That's cool. So then this editor, did the editor help you find like an agent or anything, or how did that process go? Of like when you
Pitch
finally,
Fest. Yeah.
She didn't help me find an agent, but she did help me feel incredibly confident that the story that I built was great enough for any medium. And so I submitted to Pitch Wars after I had this book that I felt so much better about. And I submitted to Pitch Wars, and like it's honestly kind of like history from there. It gave me a shot of confidence. I didn't feel like that I was submitting something that was a half measure or that it wasn't my best. Mm-hmm. What that editor did was help me build out a story that I felt really good about, good enough to continue pushing on getting it published.
And what was the Pitch Fest experience like? And for those who don't know what Pitch Fest is, can you explain that?
Okay, so Pitch Wars is
Pitch Wars, not Pitch Fest. I don't know.
Pitch Wars is this was like a very long running program. I think it recently stopped in like 2022 or something. But what it did was give a lot of potential or future or aspiring authors the opportunity to firm up their work and get it ready for publication. So you apply, and there are all of these mentors, and the mentors are already published authors, and they say, we'll take a book and we'll shape it up. And then the only thing they promise you is that agents will look at your premise and your first, couple of pages. Okay. And so I worked with my amazing Pitch Wars mentors, Sam Cheetah and Carly Blower. And they were so fantastic. They loved the story, but they also had these ideas like this, you got to fix this. You got to change this. You got to make this do something else. And I did that. And at the end, there's a showcase. And in the showcase, agents look at the work and they click out what they want to follow up on. And that's the boost, is that it lets you kind of leapfrog over that really intense querying issue. Like, who's going to like this? Who's going to do this? Because the agents come to you.
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. And now we're back.
So in general, if you only have, like if you're saying, I can't get excited about a book until 30 pages in or 50 pages in, but you're trying to get somebody to want to represent and publish your book after 3 to 5 pages, how do you figure that out?
Well, I mean, I think that you have to do a lot of work in building a really credible, like an interesting blurb. So like letting people know precisely what the premise is, the promise of the premise. So you can get people really excited on fish out of water, like 2 Black girls from the DMV are forced to redo an inn in Maine, right? Or like the idea that, the ideas can get people really excited, and you can build your story up by focusing on the premise, by building out the synopsis, and they also read for voice. So when you're in your first when you're in the first 3 or 4 pages, there is a way that you write that is like completely yours. So
Yes.
I'm a Black woman from Texas with a particular way of seeing the world, and that can turn into a voice that people find interesting or engaging. And so there's a lot of that they can read, and even in early pages.
And that leads into something that I love about your books. I love about anybody who's doing this in general is in the retelling, you have been so thoughtful about bringing in different voices and different lived experiences and diversity, for lack of a better word. I mean, that is what it is. How much of that was super intentional or just happened because it was you telling the story? And I mean, it's just so gorgeous.
Oh my gosh, thank you for that. I feel like as an anthropologist, it's a very hard thing for me to turn off. Wanting to build a world, even in romance, where these people who think differently, who live differently, who have very different views of the world, come together and find a reason and find a way to love each other, to see each other as the same. And that's the compelling work of humanity. If you think of it, we can sometimes barely do that to our own family members, but to do that to someone who's lived completely differently from you, I feel like it's a real feat. And part of my interest as a cultural anthropologist is having my characters see the world differently, having my characters understand the world differently because they've been transformed by love.
I have chills.
Is it about, I guess, the interest you have in anthropology, does that come from lived experiences? Like at what point did you say I want to do this as like more of a career thing or more of a life thing? And then obviously it integrates into your stories too, because you're just explaining that. But where did the love for anthropology in general kind of fall into place? And when did you realize there was a moment, or was there a moment when you're like, this is defined as anthropology and this is why I like it?
Okay, I love that question because if you can believe it or not, this is very strange, but I've always wanted to be an anthropologist, like for as long as I can remember, like even as a child. And let me tell you what got me. I used to watch those nature shows when they used to talk about a tribe and they're like coming of age rituals and rites. Like there was like this young boy who was like, if he jumped over a certain number of cows, right, he would like become a man afterwards. And those individuals who like shove their hands in an ant pile and if they don't scream, like they're a man afterwards. Like all of these like rites I used to watch these when I was a kid, and they're also on those like National Geographic shows. Like people were naked, And if you're like a kid where particularly you grew up in a really like kind of religious structure, and like you're watching naked people and you're kind of looking back at your mom like we're doing this, like is this, like we're okay, like it, like those shows became this interesting way to be transgressive in a very kind of structured society. But I started to associate those with like whoever that person is doing the narrating, like that's that was the job that I wanted, like that person who knew like what they were doing. And those shows are all like really problematic in retrospect, but like thinking about them when I was a young person, I wanted to be the one who decoded like information or experiences that people saw as strange or people did not understand. Some young boy is jumping over cows and it's indecipherable to a Black girl in Houston, in the like kind of inner city. And so like that person who did the decoding was what I wanted to be. And I didn't know it as an anthropologist, but I always wanted to be that person, that boy. And as I grew up, I realized, oh, okay, they study cultures. Oh, okay, this is what this is. But I've never actually kind of wavered from being that person.
Well, what's so fascinating to me is that you have found two incredible ways to do that through your day job and through your books.
Yeah. That's interesting because I do a lot of that cultural translation as well in like at work, helping people build digital services. Yeah.
Wow.
In the stories that you write, are you how much exaggeration are you putting in there, or extrapolation? I mean, what's the word? Like, are you making it bigger than life because it's fiction, or you're like, oh, little boys jumping over cows means XYZ? Are you making things up, or is it all pulled from truth in one way or another?
I would say that part of the fun thing about being an author who's also an anthropologist is that I kind of love research. You know what I mean? I like really got into it. And for Sex, Lies, and Sensibility, working with and building out an indigenous character, I wanted to take really seriously. It wasn't an identity that I wanted to like kind of phone in. So I traveled to Maine and connected with indigenous leaders there and indigenous like anthropologists to talk about, hey, what would be problematic here? What are the issues that really pissing people off? Like sitting in council meetings, 4-hour council meetings about fishing, right? I just wanted to be there. I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to do the research. I wanted to feel it with my hands. I didn't want to phone that in. And I wanted to feel Maine also. There are these aspects of Maine that you kind of have to get by being there. And those are the things that I was really proud of, that aspect of like everybody just inexplicably eating a fuck ton of blueberries for no reason. I was just like, blueberry coffee? You want some blueberry cream? You want blueberry compote with that? And I'm just like, chill on the blueberries every
I'm so glad that you shared that, because I was wondering about Bear, who is such a beautiful male character. I'm a lesbian, right? So I'm like, I love this man. And I saw him, like I felt it. You did such a great job, but I didn't know if it was just, I'm passionate and I want to learn about indigenous cultures, or if you had family that was indigenous. So I'm so glad to sort of know what that process was like. And I'm curious what your writing process like is general. So we know you love to research, like when you have an idea, how do you go from idea to, mind mapping and writing? Like, what is your process?
Something that I like to do is, just like you mentioned with your Barbies, I love to have an incredible backstory for these individuals before I start to write anything down. Like, I would like to know, there's something that Kate Claiborne asked in a session that I literally have never forgotten. And she thinks about her characters and she says, would X character sit on a beanbag chair? Right? And it seems like a question out of nowhere, but there's so much characterization in whether someone would go into a room, right, and sit on a beanbag chair, because there's no real dignity, right, in sitting in a beanbag chair or getting up from it, right? And if there are other chairs in the room, if this character is really interested in its image, or if they are less than interested in their image about what that feels like, if they want to feel comfortable, like there's so many aspects of characterization.
Are they in it for a nap, or they just want to goof off for their friends? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. What's their motivation for all of their choices?
Yeah.
The beanbag chair test. I'm going to take that to everywhere I go now. Like, what type of person are they?
What type of, like, when they're in a room and there are all these chairs available, are they going to sit in this beanbag chair? And who are they, and why would someone choose to stand if there was, if there was a beanbag chair? And why would someone sit and flop their legs up, and like, there's just so much data there. What do they have in the refrigerator right now? If you opened it up and it's midnight, and like, what do they have currently in their refrigerator? And what does that say?
Beanbags in the fridge. Obviously.
Beans in the fridge.
That says a lot. I think that's such a great perspective. Like, what is in your refrigerator says a lot about the life you choose to lead, or that you are forced to lead, either way.
What is in your fridge right now, Heather?
Oh my gosh, what's in my fridge right now? Lately I have been craving celery with peanut butter, so there's a whole bunch of chopped celery. We have some leftovers. We give our dog fresh food. Don't come at me. So we have to chop his food up. It comes in like rolls. It's gross but easy. So there's a big container of that.
That's how you describe yourself too, but besides the point. Okay, go ahead.
We always have It does describe me, and it describes me as a parent too. My kids, I was an almond mom, or an ingredients household, which has backfired because somehow it turned into my children thinking that I had too much control. It's fine, whatever. We'll talk about that later. But I'm doing the same thing with the dog that I did with the kids. Like, I want you to have the foundation of the healthiest things possible, and you're going to get all the other shit on your own, but it doesn't have to come from me. And you know, sometimes our choices don't turn out the way we wanted them to. Like we always have whipped cream because everybody likes whipped cream and salad and fresh vegetables, but it does tell you a lot. What's in your fridge, Nikki?
I think if you looked at my fridge, you would find me to be an incredibly hopeful person. Like, there may be some spoiled salads in a bag. Do you know what I mean? That's right. They spoke of an earlier me who had hope. You know what I mean? Who had the desire, right? And like the slightly saggy bags of salad, and just like they just remind you like of every way that you just didn't quite get to the mark of healthy eating that you wanted to. So I think you would find me a incredibly hopeful person in that refrigerator. You know, a lot of like pre-made meals that are just like maybe a day past due. You know, and you know, like a lot of drinks. I don't know what it is about like authors, but like we sit at a desk and they're just like these old containers.
Beverages everywhere.
They're just beverages everywhere. I cannot express to you how many beverage containers I have. So all of that to say that just my top row of, there's just so many beverages. It's just juices, like coffees, weird
get it.
Mushroom coffee.
Because you're writing.
Yeah.
And so you can drink, but it's hard to eat.
Yep.
It makes sense to me. Also, I want to give you mad props. This is why Nikki is a best-selling novelist, and I'm just starting my first novel, because I literally told you everything in my fridge, and then you can extrapolate like what that means, but you told us what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really beautiful to hear.
I was going to say
your storytelling was magical, talking about what's in your fridge. Which is,
I said, Heather, what's in your fridge? You go, peanut butter and celery. Nikki goes, a hopeful person.
Yeah. Okay, but you can be an asshole, but peanut butter and celery means like I'm choosing help. Like you could.
Yeah,
I'm not being
an
asshole.
A better job than me, okay? But we always knew that was going to be the case.
I'm not being an asshole at all. I'm pointing out what you were saying. That it's the description. I am. My person in the fridge right now is overwhelmed and underprepared. I'm drinking black coffee because I didn't think ahead to get cream.
Yeah.
And it's gross.
I love that.
I know. I told you guys all the stuff, but it does tell you, like, now I feel like I need to go back and re-listen to this and write out all the things I said and say, what does this mean about me if I'm a character in a book?
There's your next book talk post.
A writing
book talk TikTok book
talk on TikTok.
Book talk TikTok. No, I think particularly the way that you have the fresh food for your dog is like one of the most compelling examples and the most like compelling little small bits of information that you can do to create an incredibly rich character. Like this individual cares deeply about the health, right, of a creature. And that's not just like a small thing, because people who love their dogs also kind of feed them kibble, right? Like they love their pets and they love their animals, but this is a particular character who is fastidious about the care of like a vulnerable creature, right? And like already, if that person is fastidious in that aspect, how do you draw that out and say like what happens when they're on a case and there is a vulnerable character, a small boy who has to, like this is the type of person who would at the same time bring a bag of McDonald's to a boy who's been in the witness chair. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the same, Oh
God, I can see why you're so good at this. That's beautiful. And have you ever thought about teaching writing webinars or courses?
I don't know. I don't know, because I have such a
you're busy. full life.
No, maybe I'm not busy, but I just have sometimes a weird or interesting way of seeing the world that may not work for a ton of people.
Fair, but that's why I think it's cool, because it's not going to be for everybody, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be for people who feel passion about the things that you feel passionate about, telling these stories in these unique ways and uncovering the truths behind these people and their lived experiences and why they make the choices they make. I don't know. If you ever do, I'm coming. So just make sure I'm on your list.
Okay, we'll do. We'll do.
No, I to that point too, and go back to the fridge analogy for a second. I think it's important to call out that when you ask someone a question or when you're trying to convey something in written form, right, you want to get them to feel, and you don't have micro expressions to look at. You don't have someone's face to look at. You have to have them imagine it. So what are the connotations? This is training. This is just your lived experience now of getting someone to write down. They're trying to describe their character, and so what do they write down? This person has in the fridge, and so every one of the items that you're going to describe may seem sort of meaningless in black and white, but there's a connotation that reader is going to associate with every single one of those, and that's exactly what you just described with the food, the dog food. Yeah,
It's so cool. I love getting that peek into your mind and your process and everything. The universe brings you just what you need. Right when you need it, because I needed that before I start doing this. So when you're actually writing, what's that process like? Like, do you write a certain amount of time every day, or do you block out time? What's that like for you?
My kids and husband will sometimes want to shake my shoulders, but at 9:00, I shut down. I'm like, I'm not your mother. Who is that woman? I don't know her. Okay. Ask your father. I just at 9 p.m. I crack open my laptop and I say, I have to get this out. I gotta, you can almost train your brain to take out its creative energy at a certain time. You don't have, all day to get a thought out or to get an idea out. Sometimes when I'm there from 9 to 11, I've just gotten one character to the store. And it's not a big deal, but there's something that you want to convey or some small thing that you want to do. And you just sit and get that done. So, but I do have a schedule, 9 to 11. I mean, honestly, it's like a video game. My kids will absolutely try to thwart me, come down, Mom, I'm bleeding. Mom, my brother's getting on my nerves. It's just I don't know you. I'm sorry. But I do try to keep a really strict schedule and try to really be, really adhere to it, because even if you stop and do the thing that you definitely said you should do before the end of the day and all those things, you're still going to come back some 2 hours later to more story. It's never going to, you're never going to, you don't take up the time by doing another thing. The story's always going to be there, and it's always going to be waiting on you to finish it. So there's no putting off. It only makes it bigger, Well,
do you write 7 days a week?
I try to. Yeah.
I'm a morning writer.
Wow.
I usually really my mental capacity slows down right around 3 or 4, and there's not much functionality left for me. So if I want to actually write, and I'm not really a morning person, but I have to get up extra early. So when I have done NaNoWriMo in the past, I have to get up at 5:30 or 6 and write for those 2 hours, which I would not pick. I know Alan's shaking his head. I would never pick that. But I also know that I won't do the thing if I wait until afternoon or evening to do the thing.
Oh, I mean, my thing is I have 3 children in school, and the morning is just so bananas. Everyone's looking for their project. They can't find their socks. It's not a peaceful Folgers morning, where those people are just the best part away, they're just
no, I know.
It's
Me too.
a little bit insane in the morning. And I'm just my capacity is not creative right now. Even if I were better in the morning, I would never know. I'm too busy.
You wouldn't know it. I feel you. I've got 4 kids. And 2 are in college. I have one in freshman in high school and one who's in 6th grade. I just have to get up before they get up before the time that I would have to start getting up to do stuff for them. And it doesn't even make sense with me in my life, but it's the only way I can write. And I don't love it, but it's just, I've figured it out. So it's like you shutting down at 9. You're like, your mother doesn't exist for the next 2 hours. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. I heard a rumor about you there. Wouldn't know. Don't know her. You know what I mean? But no.
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. And now we're back.
Do you want to keep doing both the day job and the writing in parallel, or is the goal eventually to do one or the other full-time, more full-time than the other?
Yeah, I think the goal is eventually to write full-time. But if you know anything about like book advances, etc., then they are really nickel and diming you. You know what I mean? Even if you got a huge book advance, like you're going to get that over the space of 75 years. You know what I mean? They're just going to give you a quarter a year until it's like an annuity baby. But so it's very hard to live off of it unless you get like multiple contracts, or you start getting like a lot of royalties. So and there's just, you know, the health insurance aspect of it all. Do you know what I mean? That's enough to keep me pedaling away at this job for quite a while. The insurance of it all, you know?
Listen, I have been an entrepreneur for 25 years. And in this last month, I've been like, you know what? An easy in, easy out paycheck job with some health insurance where I have enough free time to travel and do things on my own might not suck. And I've never said that in my whole, I hate working for people. All of a sudden I'm like, perhaps that's worth pursuing.
You're just like, maybe, you know, can sell a little leg. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, show a little shoulder, you know?
Oh, Nikki, I want to come to Texas and hang out with you.
I'm in D.C. now, but I'm from Texas.
Oh, you're in D.C. now? Well, that's so close.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, where are you?
Chicago.
Okay, well, you know.
Not so bad. Alan's in New York. I go see Alan in New York.
Mm-hmm.
We can come see you in Chicago or in D.C.
all the time.
One of these days, we're going to have a Was It Chance party with past guests. We've been talking about it literally for 3 years, but one of these days we're actually going to do it, and you'll have to come.
I want to hear about your podcast venture. Me and Adriana Herrera we also have a podcast called Unbound, where we are like digging deep into romances, and we take a broad theme. And like last season, our theme was the West, and like what it means for creatives and romance authors of color to tackle like the myth of the West, you know, like this kind of the law abiding like white sheriff who goes in and just like fixes the town, you know, and just like the natives are scattering and the women are quivering, you know, and like what does that look like when people of color write the West, or when queer folk write the West, you know?
Oh, wow.
That's a Broadway play waiting to happen right there.
And that's Alan's thing. So you can work with him on production there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a great, I love that perspective. And I didn't even realize you had a podcast, which I feel bad about, but I cannot wait to listen to it now.
It's new.
Yeah.
It's new. I'm saying this to say that I would just love to sit at your feet also, to kind of learn about how you are successful in this space and what it takes, what it means.
It's a great question. I mean, Alan and I have both been, I've been podcasting for 7 years. But for me, it's just always been sort of a pleasure thing. Alan started an entire podcast network. So
how dare you?
He's kind of,
come at me.
He's like, go big or go home.
Wow.
But I don't know what you would say, Alan. I would say having a specific approach, like knowing what your niche is, and just being consistent.
Yeah.
So we release this show every other week because we didn't feel like we had the capacity to do every week. And if you do less than that, then it's hard to keep listenership up. Yeah. And we just do it. We show up, we have these conversations, we put them out every other week, and then, you know, people listen, hopefully. I don't know. What am I missing, Alan?
Oh, so much.
There is a lot. There is a lot to it. Your sound is important, and you're whatever, but you just have to do the thing.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing I tell everybody is you will never get rich or quick overnight. You probably won't get rich at all. So set those expectations right off the bat. And also, too, part of it is that you got to talk about or make a podcast about, if you're not talking on it, about something you love, because it is work. It's going to quickly turn into work if you think it's fun. So you got to continue to do something that makes you light up, makes your eyes get bright when you talk about it, and that other people can see and glom onto. And then, depending on what your end goals are, there's the whole business side of it too. So that's a whole separate podcast in and of itself. The business side. Yeah.
I'm happy to chat with you about it offline if you want to.
Oh yeah, I would love that. But I'm currently very disappointed to learn that you do not get rich from podcasting. That was my whole second act. That was my whole that was my whole plan. I'm like, if
That's
this
unfortunate.
if my author thing doesn't take off, I'll obviously become a rich podcaster.
Unless you're the smartless guys, right? Unless you already have this huge platform, it's really, really challenging. Now, some folks I know who have made money from podcasting have taken it and then they coach or teach off of it, or they're speaking, things like that. But yeah, it isn't easy.
Yeah.
It's just fun. We just enjoy it. I get to hang out with my best friend and meet incredibly cool people like you. And it's taught me to ask and not worry so much about rejection, which is interesting because Alan's going to ask you a question about that in just a minute, right? Like, I think that previous versions of me would have been terrified to message you and say, hey, do you want to be on my show? But now I've got, we're award nominated. Unfortunately, we didn't win, but that's okay. We were award nominated. And it's fun and it's engaging and we have a good time and people like being a guest on our show from what we hear because it's different, right?
Yeah.
But it's really gutsy. Like we had Laura Love Harding. I don't know if I'm curious to know whose books you love to read, but Allison Cochran and
Allison Cochran.
Just some. Do you love Allison? She's amazing, right? I was like shaking reaching out to her to ask her to be on the show. She's like, yeah, sure, I'd love to. Like, so I'm learning to trust myself.
When I first met her, she had on these absolutely drop dead gorgeous mushroom overalls. And I'm like, you need to stop right there and tell me where you got those, or like the book gets it. I had no leverage. I was like, I need to threaten you somehow, but I don't know how. Just give me the information. And
I love it.
She dresses so well.
She's fab. We loved having her on. So it's given me a lot of evidence that I can go out and ask for what I want and trust that it's all going to be fine. Like whatever happens. Yeah.
I mean, why not? Right? Like that's the whole thing. You can connect with anybody that you otherwise might put on a pedestal. Pedestal is in previous generations, but now we can just DM somebody. We can connect with our angry reviewers. We can reach out on threads. We can do all this thing with the power of the internet that you didn't know you had. And it levels the playing field in a way that is both good and bad. Bad in that now everybody can have a podcast. That's why it's so hard to make money. But good in that you can reach the people that you might otherwise not previously been able to.
Yes, and I'll go ahead and say, since we're talking about anthropological studies of the way people behave and the things that they choose, that's a very white male perspective. And you're not wrong, but so many of us, and I'm super white, but women in general are told, no, just stay back and be quiet. Don't take up space. Don't ask for what you want. Don't go. So logically, it makes perfect sense. It's right there. Just send it up. They can ignore you. They can say, no, it doesn't really matter. But in our brains, from our lived experience and patterned programming, we aren't supposed to do that. We're supposed to shut up and take care of our kids and make dinner and stay out of the way.
Women are socialized to be polite. We're socialized to be incredibly cooperative. So if someone needs something before you, to like absolutely say, go ahead, it's no big deal. Like we are like socially really like taught that, and some of that has good benefits, like high communication skills and high like ability to order, but it also affects the way that we feel like we can show up in the world, particularly taking up space and being a bitch, being like demanding something because you said so is something oftentimes the women feel like they don't want to be labeled difficult. They don't want to be labeled a bitch. They don't want to be labeled a person that is like inherently unlovable, right? As a result of going for and asking for what they want.
Absolutely. And I can only imagine that it's many layers deeper when you have the lived experience of being a Black woman.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's an aspect of the types of stories that you should be telling, right? The types of ideas that you should be speaking on. I get like content warnings on my books because my Black female characters experience the life in a Black female body. So if someone, has this tiny microaggression against them, then like I'll get a content warning on my book to say like, this book contains racism. I'm like, actually, it's just Tuesday. You know what I mean? Like everyone said that. You know what I mean? It's just Wednesday for this character. She's gotta find love. It's a book that's incredibly joyful, but it's also a book that just tells the truth about what it means to be in this body. If there's a woman who's telling a story where she works in a corporation and she doesn't meet any fucking chads, like, is this even a story, right?
I love that. Have you experienced any pushback on taking something that is so lily white, like Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice, and turning those into this gorgeous, powerful Black women experiences?
Oh, absolutely. The DMs I get, okay? Like people are like, I prefer my Jane Austen traditional. And traditional is very, it's a whistle of a word, right?
Yes, it is.
And people don't want you to like mess up their nostalgia. Like when they want to think back into a better time, a greater time in America, in the Regency, etc., they want to think back to a time where there was a particular social order that they benefited from. And so when you complicate their nostalgia with certain complexities of race, of power, of gender dynamics, then suddenly you are like messing up a classic. This is a classic for a reason. People like to hide in the past or Regency era stuff as a way to imagine a world that's like, this was without the complexities of modernity. Sorry to have such a nerdy word there, but like this was a simpler time and there were just lords and ladies and dukes and they just kissed your hand and you had to get married after this. And they feel like it was a simpler time. But those times, they don't want them complicated by any kind of, any recollection or understanding of race and power dynamics or any of that.
Absolutely. It makes me think of, I don't know if you're a Swiftie or not, but I have a daughter who's a Swiftie and I love Tortured Poets Department because the writing is extraordinary. Yeah. And there is a line that says, somebody asked me if I could go back into a time, I'm paraphrasing, where would I go? And she says the 1800s, but without the hatred and racism.
Yeah.
And people got really worked up. They're like, oh, she wants to go back to the 1800s. I'm like, okay, well, that's not actually what she said. But it's exactly what you just said is the image, the picture in your mind of what existed. And this is why we have to tell stories from different perspectives. My sixth grader, and I think this is brilliant, her history class, their whole focus for this whole first semester is invisible history and how history is written from the perspective of the victor. But there's so much more out there and it gets erased.
Yeah.
But we can find it. And I'm so grateful they're teaching that. And that's what you're teaching, I think, in your books.
That's exactly it. Like I was telling you a little bit about our discussion, me and Adriana Herrera's discussion of the West and how incredibly diverse and how incredibly queer the West was. Like the reason why they're even called cowboys was because there was low wage labor that they often chose African Americans or newly freed or enslaved populations to do. They weren't called cowhands. They were cowboys because it was a diminutive title and it was low wage work, right? And so like when you think about your typical like cowboy, these were very low wage labor migrant jobs that were mostly taken up by the poorest in society. At that time, those were Black men.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to listen to your podcast.
It was very cool.
So let's wrap up here
Yeah.
with the question we always love to end with, of just what your relationship is with failure.
Oh, yeah. Failure, I would say, started my career. I had a big idea, and I had a big idea that really came from wanting to experience joy for once. Writing can be full of so many no's. It can be full of so many ways that people tell you that your idea sucks, your way of thinking sucks. And I just put this idea out to try to feel good about myself. And you think it's going to be some heartwarming story of like, I just tried and then everyone loved it and now I'm a best-selling. And I was like, no, I threw it out there quickly to just try to feel something. And in the way that you throw out like a fic, if you like write any fanfic, and it came back to me in this wave of no, but even sifting through this wave of no, I tried to find something I can make meaning from. And it was that one Goodreads review saying, this isn't bad. I see what this person was doing. They just need an editor. And so even when you have this wave of everyone telling you no, this wave of friction that you're just pushing against, there are oftentimes these kernels or these pieces that you can like pull off the tree as you kind of move through the friction. And it's always useful. So like no is actually a sign of movement. And if you're not doing anything, of course you're not going to get any no's. You're going to be in a failure-free space. But it's oftentimes proof that you are moving and creating friction in the world. And I wouldn't change that, because I had enough. I had enough of a non-ego I'm a former academic, so I'm just honestly quite used to my papers being trashed. But like having enough of a non-ego to sift through those no's and find that individual who believed in what you are trying to do was incredibly powerful for me.
I love that. Nikki, are you working on a third book?
Oh gosh, I am working on the most fun third book. It is a murder mystery set in PG County. It is what happens when a hard-boiled detective has to team up with a Reddit detective, sheltered church girl who knows exactly who got married on Love is Blind, but doesn't quite know how to do detective work in real life. And when she is at the center of a murder investigation, in which she is a suspect, she has to learn how to be a detective IRL very fast.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait. When is it supposed to come out, and how can I get on the ARC list?
Okay. Oh, absolutely. So next year, August, and on the ARC list, we'll just send me your information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, sometimes there are perks of the job, and I want to be the first to read your book so I can be on your launch team and be your cheerleader. And that's one of my favorite things I get to do because of this podcast.
I love it. Say less.
Well, so plug your websites, plug your social media accounts. How can we connect with you? How can we DM you and say hi?
Okay. I am most active on Instagram. I am Nikki Payne Books on Instagram, and I'm also on TikTok, but if you DM me, it's gonna be a week, and then I'll check it. I am on X, but only for the Black Twitter memes, not to really engage. I'm on Threads, but also not as much. But you can still find me on Threads. And what else? My website is NikkiPayneBooks.com, and that is full of like my events and other interesting things. I also have a newsletter, which is spotty but kind of funny. So get into that.
Can we find that from your website?
You can.
Sign up for your newsletter. Okay, great. We're going to put all those links plus links to both of Nikki's best-selling books in our show notes. Listen to this episode, buy the books, follow her on Instagram. She's a real person. She's wonderful. And also y'all go listen to Unbound because like you just heard why. Like it's amazing. Nikki, I am so grateful that you said yes. I'm so grateful that you do the work you do. I've decided that like, is it okay? Can we be best friends? Can we be
cousins? We're more than friends.
Cousins. Yes. My cousin Nikki. I'm in. Yeah. This has been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. This is awesome.
Thank you both.
Ooh, your fangirl was going off on this one.
My fangirl was going up. I'm like so ridiculously filled with joy right now about that entire conversation. First of all, I just have to say, before we even started recording, Nikki's just got the most wonderful, fun personality. She's silly and fun and fits in with us really well. And then I swear, the more she spoke, the more I was moved and engaged. And I really just think she's brilliant.
I do too. I truly enjoy the way she looks at just everyday scenarios and everyday objects. I still go back to just how I was blown away by her answer to what's in your fridge question. Like, just think about things in a way that I would never have because I'm such a literal thinker. I'm like me, obviously. Like, so what do you have in your fridge? I got some leftover this and some stale that. And so, but why? Why do you have all that in there? What does it mean to have all that in there? And what's in there is less important than why you have it in there. That's the message. Yeah. So being able to convey that without beating the reader over the head, that's what you're conveying. That's what's super impressive about what she was doing. About just how she communicates. I think she's incredible.
She is incredible. Incredible. I don't know. I feel like I needed this conversation this week. And I have to tell, like, I don't know who's listening that loves to read. Her books are so good. Yes, they're romance. And yes, they're retold, famous story plot lines. But the way she writes is different than I've ever read from anybody else.
Interesting.
And you guys should just really read the books.
Well, we'll have links in the show notes. Check them out.
I don't know. There's so much. I could go on and on and on with all of it, but I just hope you guys listen. I don't know, maybe listen several times because there were so many quotable moments. One of the things that you and I do, Alan, when we're interviewing is when one of us hears something that lights us up. We're like, ooh, this could be cold open. It's usually me. I'm usually the one who's like, how about this? How about this? And often it's one or two times throughout the conversation. I think I said 4 or 5. Maybe cold open. Oh no, this one's cold open. Like such a great conversation.
Well, yeah, the conversation she brought. Well, just the way that she brought the conversation. That's what I get back to. Again, it's just like we talk about normal things with normal people, but then when it's the way they describe it and the way that they think about it that's always makes it so interesting and different. And then you bring an anthropologist into the literary world, and your environments, your scenarios, your worlds that you're reading about just become so much more fulfilled and brighter
and enriched. Fulfilled, brighter, and enriched. So gorgeous. Yep. Yes. I love that we get to do this. Folks, you've been listening to Was It Chance, the podcast about embracing opportunity and taking intentional risk for your creative life. Thank you so much for being here. Alan, can you tell folks how they can connect with us?
Yeah. Slip into our DMs on Instagram and now TikTok. And you can write us at Was It Chance podcast? Was It Chance podcast? I always forget this. Was It Chance podcast at gmail.com. Right.
Yes. Right. And Was It Chance on Instagram and on Threads. And now we're on TikTok now, though. Y'all go follow us on TikTok, please. My daughter was like, you found me on TikTok. You're not allowed to follow me through Was It Chance on TikTok. And I'm like, I don't care about following you, but you need to follow us.
Please. Yeah.
Please. We need the followers. Seriously. Okay. Y'all take care. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for being here.
All right. Bye.